Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to our Jom Sembang session tonight. Thank you for being early. We actually have a short video to share with all of you here who just joined in. So let's watch a video while we wait for the rest of the participants to come in. Is that all right?
So burnt out is actually something that was introduced quite early, and it was actually initially introduced in terms of work. But if you look at the symptoms and signs, they are actually transferable to other situations. It's been actually defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So individuals who are burnt out feel that their energy has depleted, increasingly exhausted. They feel that they have increased mental distance from their job or the activity that they're dealing with. They have a lot of negativity and cynicism related to the particular effort that they're actually trying to do. So if you think about those terminology, and if you're starting to feel the same way at this point of time, persistently feeling tired with COVID, persistently feeling indifferent as a result of the MCO that's ongoing, feeling that you're just so frustrated with the situation that's happening at the moment, you probably are dealing with pandemic burnt out.
What are our values? Many of you ask, I have anxiety, what do I do? First of all, acknowledge what is within your control. Second of all, lean into those emotions. Do not avoid those anxiety. And when you are able to do that, the third thing is to act on your values. You know what is important to you. You know what is meaningful to you. Now we have a choice to act on it. Let your values guide your way. Make way. As you make way for your emotions and thoughts, let it be there, but let your values guide your way.
Between task and ability to cope. So we are trying to aim for balance, which is what you're seeing right now. If a task is being given to me and I'm able to cope, I'm in a comfortable place, right? Now, this is ideal, and life doesn't always be like this all the time, And when anxiety kicks in is when the task seems a lot heavier. So if I was to put it here, this is the diagram I'm looking at. So the task is suddenly so heavy and I'm losing confidence in my ability to cope. So then suddenly this task turns into a threat. It's like this huge catastrophe almost. It's a big burden on us, and oh my goodness, I don't think I can really feel I don't feel settled at all. Okay, so
Right, shall we start? It's 9:04 right now. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Jom Sembang session, and thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us this evening. I'm Lynette. I'm very happy to be with all of you today. I'm a registered and licensed counselor and a volunteer of C.A.R.E Warriors. It is truly my pleasure to be with to be the moderator of tonight, and I can't wait to learn from Kai Shuen already. But before we move on, please allow me to share with you who C.A.R.E Warriors is and what do we aspire to do. We are a community-based NGO which started off in Subang Jaya to improve mental health awareness and suicide prevention in the community. Since then, we have worked our way through and have since raised our intentions to work nationally in improving mental health awareness, providing knowledge and skills on mental health, and help people to get to care. Most of our work revolves around talks, trainings, and community outreaches. However, since the pandemic, like many of the industries and many of the businesses and many of the communities, all of our activities are affected. But that did not stop us from doing whatever we could to contribute to the community. Hence the birth of Jom Sembang. Jom Sembang is a monthly mental health webinar where we sembang about everything and anything concerning the mental health of Malaysians. And today we will be touching on a topic that is very alarming in our nation, in fact worldwide, and that is suicide, and hopefully to learn tips and tools to help prevent one. So before I introduce our speaker tonight, I'd like to walk us through a few gentle reminders. So please take note that this session will be recorded. A recording will be made available on our Facebook page and YouTube channels. Our socials details are listed at the bottom of the screen. You can have a look, or if you want to mark them down right now, that would be great as well. And also like to inform you that this session is live streamed to our Facebook page. Appreciate if you could mute your microphone throughout the entire session to minimize disruption. And at the end of the presentation, there will be a Q&A session, all right? But throughout the entire session, please feel free to put down your questions or your comments in the chat box. But do remember to be kind and considerate in your language use. If you like to speak during the Q&A session, you can click the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we will unmute you, okay, to speak if time permits. All right, so lastly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the session. Okay, without further ado, let's begin our Jom Sembang session today by introducing our speaker for tonight. Mr. Pheh Kai Shuen, right, is a clinical psychologist and head of program at the Department of Psychology and Counseling, UTA. Upon completion of his bachelor degree in education and master's in clinical psychology, he is now pursuing his PhD in psychological medicine in UPM. Mr. Pheh's professional interest lies in neurodevelopmental disorders, mindfulness-based intervention, psychodynamic psychotherapy, mental health literacy, and suicide prevention. He is actively involved in suicide prevention work, both local and national level. He has also developed and piloted a 4-step suicide prevention training program in Malaysia known as C.A.R.E. C.A.R.E. Mr. Pheh is also a full member of Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychology and has vast experiences in both clinical and community work. And I shall not take up any more of your time. So over to you, Kai Shuen.
Hi, thank you so much, Lynette, for your introductions. Okay, let me share my slides. Okay, good evening and thank you for joining me tonight, talking about, to discuss one of the very important topics today, suicide preventions. And this is a very brief gatekeepers talk, or a brief seminars talk. We'll be talking about how can we identify warning signs of suicide and what are the things that we can do to help to prevent a suicide. So as you just some friendly reminder as you work your way through the seminar, remember to stay attuned to your feelings and to stay attuned on your own progress. Reflecting on the issues of suicide sometimes can evoke feelings of distress or concerns to many people. Be sure to monitor your own emotion reactions to this material. Seek out support from mental health professionals when necessary. I know in the C.A.R.E Warrior websites there are quite a number of resources of how you can seek help, and we'll talk about that as well in a while. So from time to time, this is how you can check through your own feelings, how are you progressing on the talk. So right now, if you are this is everywhere we go now, people are taking our body temperatures, but we probably can also learn how to take our emotional or feelings temperature. So a reading of 1 means that you are doing great. A reading of 5 means that it's a little bit hard, but I'm in control. If you're up to 7, I'm heating up. 8 is I'm boiling. 10 is like I'm exploding out of control. So probably want to check from yourself, check in with yourself from time to time. How are you doing? If you notice that things are probably piling up, then it's okay that you can take a break and probably you feel free to leave the Zoom call for a while, and then you can come back again if you feel that you want to. Right, so this is a reminder for everyone. Just to check with people. How do you feel right now? Would you mind to respond in the chat box? From a 1 to 10, how are you doing right now? So you can put into chat box with the numbers. If you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah, so I'm seeing quite some responses over here. Okay, wow, some people are at many people are in between of 1, 2, 3. There are people in between of 4 to 5. All right. For people who are, if you're having a 5 or 6, then be aware of your own feelings, be aware of your own progress throughout the talk, and feel free to take a break whenever it is necessary. Right. Let's talk a little bit. Let's move to a little bit of facts and figures on suicide. So suicide is the 4th leading cause of death among 15 to 29 years old young people. And it used to be the 2nd, and recently when WHO released the new data, it has been the 4th instead of the 2nd. So that shows that the situation is slightly improving over the years. Over 700,000 of people who died by suicide every year. So that used to be 800,000, and now things are getting slightly improved. Things that has not changed. Majority of suicide happens in the low and middle income countries. So that's probably contrary to lots of popular belief. We probably hear a lot of suicide news from the American, from the Europeans, from Japan, and Korea. We thought that suicide is a phenomena that urban phenomena because of stress. So a lot of people are suicidal, but that's not exactly true. A lot of suicide, in fact, about more than 3/4 of suicide happens in the low and middle income countries. Let's look at a little bit. This is how this is a representation of how worldwide suicide are happenings, what's going on in the world. The darker the color is, the more the higher the suicide rate in that particular country. So Malaysia is we are in the orange color. Not too bad. WHO estimated about 5.7 to 5.8 suicide per 100,000 people. So it's not that it's not very high, but it is still something that we probably need to concern of. And also over the years, things are actually getting worse. Another parts that probably people that you probably would be interested to have a look is on the adolescents. We don't have exact suicide rate in Malaysia because we don't have a very good data source from how many people actually die from suicide in Malaysia. The WHO data was an estimation. It's not an exact suicide rate. But anyway, what do we have is how many of our adolescents, our young people are actually feeling suicidal. You can look at over here, about 10 this is a survey done in 2017. About 10% of young people are having suicidal ideations. 7.3 are having a plan. 6.9 has made an attempt. If you compare the data of 2017 compare with 2012, the same study, you probably it is clear that this is actually an increasing trend, especially on ideation, from about 7.9% in 2012 to 10% in 2017. In terms of ethnicities, Indians has the highest prevalence, followed by Chinese, and then others, Bumiputra. The Malays have the lowest prevalence rate. Now, such a pattern was quite consistent over the years. We don't exactly know what's going on, although there are some speculations of socioeconomic status could be one of the issues. Many people who are living in many people who are from the low and middle income families, they are probably at a higher risk as compared to those who are the T20, the so-called top 20% people. Okay, yeah, so this is a start. We have covered this one. This is an earlier data in 2008. It's quite outdated, but we don't have the new suicide registry have not been available yet. Back in 2008, our suicide rate, we have about 300 over people die from, less than 300 people died from suicide. But the number has been significantly increased since then. Back then, about half of them are Chinese. About 1/3 of them are 27.3% are Indians, and Malays are being the lowest group. Okay, I want to move on to another side and would like you to respond a little bit from in the chat box. So suicide happens, first of all, suicide can happen without any warning. How many of you think that could be right? And would you mind to put in the chat box whether it's true or false? So if you think that that's true, you can put in a T. If you think that that's false, then that's an F. All right, so yeah, so quite a number of people know the response that I'm seeing here. We have, yeah, so it's a mix. Some people think that that's true. Many of them are probably false. Yeah, so it's actually false. Majority of people who are considering suicide often give warning signs and clues that he or she is suicidal. It's probably not, definitely not all of them, but I would say the majority of people who are suicidal or who have made an attempt, they usually have provide some warning signs and some clues over there. So we'll learn about how do we recognize these warning or these warning signs in a while. Number 2, suicidal persons keep their plans secret. What do you think? Is this a true or it's a false? All right. Yeah, so we have numbers of people thought that that's probably, yeah, again, it's a mixed response. Some people do thought that that's probably true because many people believe that people who are really suicidal, if they really want to die, then they probably won't share their plans with others people. They probably won't share their share what they have in their mind. But the fact is, studies have shown that many people communicate their suicidal intentions and sometimes even their plan during the week before their attempts. So I guess it's important to recognize that many suicidal people, they may actually provide hints, or they actually talk about their plans or their thoughts directly or indirectly during the week before, a week or two before their attempts. So the key is whether we are we able to catch those signs, right? Persons who talk about suicide do not attempt suicide. What do you think about this? Persons who talk about suicide probably do not attempt suicide. False. Yep. Okay. Now, many people have probably responded correctly. Most people who talk about suicide, many people who talks about suicide often attempt it and maybe may even die by suicide. So when people, when anyone that we talk about suicide in their day, when they start to talk about suicide or discuss about the topics of suicide, I guess it's important that we started to ask them, take it seriously. Do not take the signs as something that is, they are probably just making a threat. They are probably just attention seeking. I guess a lot of people believe in that. That's not entirely true. So many people who talks about suicide may actually attempt and maybe die. Even if it's even sometimes people some people who talk about suicides are for attention seeking purpose. Very few people actually do that. But even when they do that, it means that they are in need of help. So do not just ignore it when people, when someone has been talking about suicide or sharing their suicidal ideations. Suicidal people want to die. Do you think they really want to die? Yeah, that's probably sounds like, this is an interesting one, isn't it? If they don't want to die, why are they harming themselves? Why are they killing themselves? No. Okay. So any ideas of, if they are not killing, if they don't want to die, then why are they doing something that is potentially dangerous, potentially lethal? Yeah, Sufan mentions that they want to end their pain. You are right. Most suicidal people wanted to kill the pain, but they are undecided and uncertain about living and dying. They're not too sure whether they want to live or they want to die, but they want to kill the pain. They want to stop the pain. And often they see that there's no other way available to end the pain, and harming themselves or killing themselves is probably the only way that they can end the pain. Ending their life is the only way to end the pain. So that's maybe one of the things that, one of the reasons of people wanted to die. So remember, if we can get one of the important implications of this understanding is, since we know that people who are suicidal, they want to end their pain, if we can help to address their pain, then they may not be wanted to die anymore. All right. If we can do something that to relieve the pain, then very likely they may reconsider about their decisions. Finally, discussing the topic of suicide may give someone the idea of suicide. Yeah, this is one of the very popular statements. Many people thought of, I know that he has been depressed. I know that he has been very unhappy. So when I talk to him, probably I need to be very careful. I don't want to mention anything about self-harm or suicide or anything, because that might be actually that might be disturbing, and that might be giving him an idea of to harm himself. Yeah, is that true? Okay, yeah, so most people have answered false here. Now, no one can give another person the idea of suicide. Now, this is something just like if I were to ask some of you over here, people over here, how many of you are smoking? Okay, do you smoke? Maybe a yes or no in the chat box. Yep. So Amin respond that no, you are not smoking. So just wondering, just because I discussed the issues about smoking with you, just because I asked you whether you have been smoking, would that turn you to become a smoker? Would you started to pick up a cigarette and started to smoke? Very unlikely. right? So no one can give the idea of suicide to the other persons. Bringing up the issues of suicide can be very helpful to the person who is experiencing emotional pain and they want help often. So I guess it's important that, you know, when you notice that someone is probably at risk, someone is probably needed the help, it's important that we open up and discuss the issues with them instead of trying to avoid the issues. Now, having to say that, there's one caveat over here. Discussing about the methods of suicide with people who are at risk is not a good idea. Okay, some people who are at risk of having suicidal ideations or vulnerable to suicidal, they probably has been quite depressed for periods of time, and they probably has been considering about suicide. And at that moment of time, if we are exposing them to the specific method of suicide, that might actually make things worse. Okay, so it's important to note that we want to discuss the topics of suicide and we want to do it safely. Safely as in, generally, number one, do not discuss any method. Number two, I guess it's also important that when we discuss suicide, we are using a non-judgmental, coming from a non-judgmental stance. Do not decide whether it's right or wrong, or we started to tell people that, hey, tak baik fikir macam tu. Once we say that, then that's a judgment. If we started to tell people that if you think of suicide, you are going to hell, then that's also a judgmental position, and that's usually it's not very helpful. Okay, so we are going to learn about methods, some simple steps of what you can do and how can you help individuals with suicidal ideations. Number one, so this is a four-step approach of how can you support people who has a suicidal ideations. Step number one, care and concerns are expressed. Number two, attentive listening. Number three, risk reviews and management. Number four, ensure of seeking professional help. All right. So we'll go through one by one. And why do we need to do this? Why do we need to do this? All right. So disclaimer for those people who are attending this program for the first time, it's important to know that this is not the form of counseling, it's not the form of treatment, it's not the psychotherapy. So do not expect people after you do this, after you use this C.A.R.E approach, your friends or your family members would their suicidal thoughts would disappear. They no longer have their suicidal thoughts. Okay, it doesn't work in that way. Right? This is more like a first aid program. So you are seeing that someone is bleeding badly over there. You try to stop the bleeding. You put on a bandage and then send them to the hospital. Send them for professional help. It's more like the program intended to offer hope and through positive actions. Right? So what do we do? Step one, care and concern are expressed. First thing first, take the clues and warning signs that you observe very seriously. Okay, what are the warning signs? Some of the clues including of people started to tell you that I'm tired of life, I just can't go on anymore. My family would be better off without me. Who cares if I'm dead anyway? I just want a way out. I'm feeling very trapped and I just want to end all of this. I won't be around much longer. Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me anymore. Now, this is pretty common in our community, in our society, because suicide is still, to a large extent, suicide is still a very taboo subject in our community, particularly for people who are particularly in the religious group. Many of the religions in Malaysia believe that people who die by suicide is going to hell. They are going to be penalized by God. So a lot of people that with suicidal ideations, they probably do not have much space and time that they can express themselves freely. So they probably have to, say it in a way that is a little bit more subtle. Something that's some very direct verbal clues, including sort of I've decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. If such and such doesn't happen, I will kill myself. Now, this is like a suicidal threat, and a lot of people, started to think that I'm not going to take such a threat, but that's not true. Many people who posted threats like this, they may actually happen. Something that is new in recent years is people started to post something like this, mention about their suicidal ideation in the social media. So it has happened several times that in Malaysia that people post the suicide notes, or even taking votes decisions of how many people thinks that I should probably die by suicide. Once people post such things, I think it's important that we provide support to them. Report to Facebook if possible, so that Facebook would consider to take the post down and it doesn't affect so many people. Also provide support resources to the persons who need it. Now, once you notice that once you hear that someone has been mentioning about suicidal ideation, sharing about their suicidal ideation, what do you do next? If you're in doubt, don't wait, ask the questions. We'll talk about what is that question. Express your concerns to the person alone in a private setting. Do not ask in the public. Do not ask in a place that they are together with their family members or their other friends are around. Sometimes people wanted to share, but they probably prefer to share in private. I recently have a client who told me that his friends actually asked him about, her friend actually asked her about suicidal ideations when a group of them are in a Zoom call. So apparently they are in a Zoom call discussing an assignment, and she has been feeling pretty low and down for quite some time. And one of these friends who is very concerned about her and suddenly thought about asking her whether she is suicidal. When they were in the midst of a Zoom assignment Zoom call, she was a little bit freaked out and she was very uncomfortable. She chose not to answer the questions, but luckily the friend followed up with her later on after the group discussions, and she actually admitted and referred her for help. So I guess it's important that we do not in a private setting, in an appropriate context, allow the persons to express freely. If the person is reluctant at that time, respect their boundary, and you may want to revisit the topic with the persons maybe a few days later. Always let them know that when you're ready to talk, when you feel like you wanted to talk, I'm always here for you. Okay. Now, so how do we ask this question? You can take pictures of these slides, or you want to remember these slides. This is important. We recommend that given our cultural climates, we probably can ask in this way. When people are as upset as you seems to be, they sometimes wish that they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. Right? So this question has been very carefully designed in the sense that, number one, you're talking about others people first. You didn't directly talk about him or her. Okay, so you talk about others people when people are as upset as you seems to be, and they sometimes wish that they were dead. So you're not trying to put things a little bit to normalize things a little bit, but of course not to promote it. Saying that they sometimes thought of they want to hurt themselves, they wish that they were dead, and wonder if you feel it that way too. Then only you come back to them. Okay, so this is important. Ask the questions, trying to understand what's going on. You can start if it's very difficult for you to ask this question. Then another way is you ask in a less direct approach. Have you been so unhappy lately? Have you been very unhappy? Have you thought of so unhappy lately that you have been thinking about ending your life? Or another way is, have you ever wished that you could go to sleep and never wake up again? So this is a passive suicidal thoughts, but in fact there are people who are in a life crisis, or who are struggling with managing their emotions. Sometimes they would think in that way, whether of they wanted to go to sleep and never wake up anymore. Okay, a more direct approach should look pretty miserable. I wonder you are thinking about suicide. I wonder whether you are thinking about killing yourself. So that's a pretty straightforward way, manners. I cannot say that it's one size fits all. Of course, I recommend this semi-direct approach of asking, but I don't believe that this one will suit each and every one that you are going to meet. I believe that a more practical approach is that you need to look at the situations. What is your relationship with the other persons? Do you all use? Is this a friend? Is this a family members? Do you think the person is going to answer you directly or honestly? So I guess that's important. Do not, if you cannot ask that questions, please find someone who can. Sometimes when we get into people who are really close to us, for example, our family members, our siblings, it may be quite difficult to ask the question. It may be quite difficult that, to know about these very private thoughts of theirs. If you find it very difficult to ask you and you cannot do it, but you are concerned about the person, then get someone who can. How not to ask the questions? There are times that we have met people asking the question in a way of, "You're not suicidal, are you? Okay, you're not suicidal, right? You're not going to do something that's stupid, right?" Yeah. So when you ask in that way, this is a question that's not only leading, but you also there's actually a subtle message of, if you're saying yes, if you have a suicidal thoughts, I don't know how to handle you. I don't know what to do on you. So you better tell me that you're not suicidal. Okay. So remember, do not ask in this way. So what you need to do is, instead of asking of, "You're not suicidal, right?" you can say that, when people are very upset, they may sometimes think of hurting themselves. I wonder if you feel in that way too. Okay, tips for more care and concerns. Remember, give yourself plenty of time. Have your resources handy. This is a website that groups of people has been spending some time to put up. This is a mental health services directory in Malaysia. Of course, it may not be the most comprehensive one. I believe that some services are still missing out, but it covers most of the service that is available, and it's throughout Malaysia, from Perlis to Johor, from Sabah to Sarawak. And we also have the government has a 24/7 emergency helpline 15999. It does not necessarily provide counseling, but when someone in a crisis, when someone have very strong suicidal thoughts, that's probably one of the way that they that they can call up to talk to someone. In many cases, people with suicidal thoughts. Sometimes the thought can be transient as in it's not something that's ongoing. It doesn't last for a few days or a few weeks. So in some people's case, the suicidal urge, it is just a matter of hours. So if they can talk to people, let's say for half an hour or 45 minutes, it makes them much relief, instead of they need to struggle it on themselves. Right. So over here, just to check with everyone, we have been talking a little bit about how can you ask the question. So just to check in with everybody, how are you doing right now? Would you mind to let me know? Share your current ratings, your current readings in the chat box. Oh, okay, yeah. So we have people who are in the 8. Okay, so that's good. And let's move on to the second step. Now, once we are aware that people who are having suicidal thoughts, once we know that people have a suicidal ideation, the next thing is listen attentively. Now, this is a very, very important steps. Why do I say that attentive listening? But it's not that. Lots of people would ask, lots of from the questions that we have received while collecting your registration form. I think some people, there are people that has been asking, so what do we do once we know that someone who is suicidal? What do we tell them? What do we say with them? Actually, that's not exactly the best thing to do. The best thing to do when you know that someone has a suicidal ideation is attentive listening. That's probably more important than anything else. Listen to the problems and give them your full attentions, trying to understand of what's coming up with them, trying to understand about what's going on. Now, this listening, the purpose of this listen is not to the purpose of the listening is not to respond to them, but it's listen to understand them, listen to know that what's going on within them, what is their feeling inside, what are the things that they are having inside in their mind, what's going on, what makes them suffer so much, why is it that's so painful for them, without trying to fix it. Now, many of us, when we see people are in pain, we have the tendency of we want to fix the problem immediately. We want to give a solution. We want to dish out solutions immediately. Now, this may work for many healthy people, but it's not the best thing to do when someone who is experiencing crisis. One of the best listening skills that I have here that I've been recommending to lots of people is called meow. So what does it mean by meow? So this meow is not asking you to go there and started to make the sounds of meow. So it's not that meow. This meow stands for M stand for all right. E stand for A. O. And W. Wow, that's not an easy one. Wow, that's quite difficult. All right, so you probably want to acknowledge the person's feelings, okay, and listen without actually advising, listen without actually trying to fix the issues. Just listen only, and acknowledge the person's feelings when necessary. You may say that I can see that you're feeling really, really upset. I can see that you're feeling really down. You're feeling so worried about the situations. I can see that you're struggling with your works, and that's really painful. When you know that you are living with the moment you are being diagnosed with cancer, you felt so hopeless, and and losing that hope is really, really painful. So you want to acknowledge the feelings of the persons, what's going on over there, instead of trying to fix it. Now, there's a reasons why we need to do this. The reasons why listening works is got to do with how our brain works. There are several important parts in our brain. Now, amygdala, I'll start from over here, from the right-hand bottom. Amygdala is the part, it's part of our, inside our brain, in the inner brain, somewhere we call it limbic system. It's being deep-seated in the brain. It's being turned on when people experience crisis in a fight or flight situations, right? It sometimes also store memories of events that are with very strong emotions. For example, do you remember the first time that you feel very scared or you feel of something? Then you remember that's our feeling center, especially our fear center. Okay, and hippocampus is the place where it regulates memories and emotions, and we have prefrontal cortex. Now, prefrontal cortex is the part where we do the thinking, the logical reasonings, and what to do, and we evaluate things. Okay, if prefrontal cortex is the part that we use it for problem solving. Now, right now, you're listening to this, you're joining this seminar, you're listening to this seminar, your prefrontal cortex are probably working, trying to digest the information that we have over here. But for many people, for people who are in a crisis, when amygdala is being turned up, when amygdala is being turned on, it suspend the amygdala may actually suspend the functions of the rest of the brain. Now, many of us probably have this experience that you burn your midnight oil, study the whole night for the next day exam. And when you go into the exam hall, you look at the question paper, and then your mind started to gone blank, because when you look at the exam paper, you started to get panic. Your amygdala is activated, and then your prefrontal cortex gone blank. It doesn't work anymore. For people who are in a suicidal crisis, often the amygdala is being activated, being turned on. And under that situations, the prefrontal cortex probably cannot work very, very well. The functions of prefrontal cortex, often it's compromised. And you try to give them advice, you try to analyze the problem with them, you try to tell them don't think too much, you try to tell them that they should do this, they should do that. If the amygdala is not being fixed, then the prefrontal cortex cannot work very well. How do we fix the amygdala? How do we deactivate the amygdala? The most effective way is actually active listening. And also, when you listen to the persons, you connect with the person, you provide a safe connection with the person at an emotional level. And also, you acknowledge the person's feelings, you validate the person's feelings, you're telling the persons that, hey, your feelings make sense. Your feelings I can see that why you are feeling in that way. Now that actually helps the amygdala to be deactivated. It helps the amygdala to be not so strong anymore. Okay, now when amygdala is deactivated, then our prefrontal cortex will come back to work. Then they can start to think about things that of how can they face the current problem, how can they resolve the current challenges. Okay, so remember, suicide is probably not the problem, but it's the solution. It's the only solution to a perceived insoluble problem. When people are in a great distress, their reasoning abilities are often compromised. Reasoning, lecturing them, explaining with them, give them the solution at that point of time may not be very useful. Do not rush to judgments or trying to advise people. That's not the best way to do things. Okay, step number 3, risk review and management. Now, you wanted to know that this person is probably, what are the things that you need to do? Now, several things that you need to understand. Number 1, when you're trying to listen to your friends, so a few things what are the things that you want to listen? Number 1, has the person has any previous suicide attempt? If they have any previous suicide attempt, that actually put them at a higher risk of having another attempt. Do they have an organized plan, or do they know the method? Have the person started to prepare, do something to prepare? Now, those are all very high risk behaviors. Does the person has a hallucinations or delusion? Do they hear voices telling them what to do? Do they have a delusion, believing that someone is probably coming after them? And they probably have to harm themselves so that they are not being harmed by others people. Have they lost the rational thinking abilities? Co-occurring depressions or any other mental disorders is often another risk factors. Now, not all people who are suicidal has a mental health conditions, although a large majority of them probably have that. And that is actually another risk factors, because depressions clouded our thinkings, and it makes us feel that we sucks and we are a failure, so they cannot see themselves from the other side. Any drugs or alcohol abuse or relapse of drugs and alcohol abuse after periods of time, the sense of hopelessness. Okay, have they got the suicide notes? Any post notes or suicide notes or posts on the social media? Putting personal affairs in order. Okay, their pet, their assets, for young people probably their computers, their handphone, and they start to arrange things in order. Giving away their prized possessions. Sudden interest or disinterest in religion. Some people has been, of my clients often tell me that I've been praying to God for so long, but God never answer my prayers, so they get very disappointed and they started to be disinterest within religions. Unexplained anger, aggressions, or irritability. This is especially common among men. and also probably adolescents. Our culture, due to our culture, has been telling you that men don't cry, men has to be as strong as a rock, So men are probably not allowed to express their emotions, express their feelings, and they sometimes can turn these feelings, this low mood, into anger and aggressions. What is helpful? You probably can discuss with them what are the helpful coping strategies. You can ask questions like, in the past, when you have similar difficulties in the past, what do you do? What helps you? All right. So you probably want to discuss some of the strategies with them. And is there anything that they can do on their own that chill them up a little bit, chill them out as well? Cheer them up a little bit and chill them out a little bit. Has they tried anything? What works? What doesn't work? Okay. Now, you don't want to tell the person directly on the coping strategies. You want to hear it from them. So you probably a better way is that you ask them about what is their experience, what were their experience, how do they overcome similar situations in the past. Number two, you probably want to explore a little bit about what's the reasons of leaving. The reasons of living is, of course, is something fluid and it may come and go, but discussing the reasons of living often help people to see a little bit more hope, or may also remind them of why they should continue the fight, or why they should continue with their life. The fight with by saying that the fight is the fight with depressions or their mental health issues. Is there any other helpful people that they can call? Is it their friends, their family members, any other of their social networks? In young people, recently I increasingly seeing some young people that told me the persons that they can trust is probably staying 8,000 miles away. As in, the person is it's not the local, it's not an actual friend, it's a virtual friends. They know their friends probably from Russia, from US, from Canada, and they play games together online, and that's probably their social network. Now, if that's a very important social network, please let them continue of having that social network. Make sure that they have sufficient, they have some support or access from there. Other than the virtual one, what about the physical supports that they have? Do they have it from their friends, their parents, any of the family members? Sometimes people may not be the closest person to you is probably not your immediate family members. If that's your extended family member, that's fine, as long as you have someone that's supporting you. Helplines, professional agencies that may be helpful. You probably want to discuss with them where can they get the help that they need. Okay. Finally, step 4, finally, ensuring seeking of professional help. So getting to see mental health professionals, psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, counselors, these are all professionals that probably would be able to help people with suicidal ideations. So and most of the major hospitals are having this service, either of these. Most of the hospital probably have a psychiatrist. Many hospitals in KL, in Penang, especially those in the city, would have a clinical psychologist. And counselors are available now even in KK, in the government clinic kesihatan. Right. So how do you get people to seek help? This is one of the questions that being asked in the registration form. Now, instead of saying that, hey, I know that there's doctors in hospital there are psychiatrist service in hospital Kuala Lumpur. I think you better go and see a psychiatrist in hospital Kuala Lumpur. As compared to that, and you tell the persons that I've known Dr. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so personally, who is an expert in this area. He's a friendly person, he's approachable, or something like that. Now, in government hospital, because you cannot refer directly to to specific doctors, but you can still say that I've known that there is psychiatry clinics in hospital Serdang, for example, and I've heard from others people that the doctors are quite okay. The medical teams over there are very friendly, are very helpful. Do you want to give it a try? Now, if you could offer a specific context of a mental health professionals for people, that's going to be much more helpful than you just tell them that I think you need to see a psychiatrist and full stop. right? So the trick is you give as detailed information, as much information as possible. So, and you probably want to buy in a little bit, describing a little bit of positive characteristics of the persons. Then you can say that, will you go with me to get help? When you, how can you let me to help? Can you let me to help you? Now, final steps is ensure of professional help. Now we have a 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star services of how can you getting your friends to get help. A 3-star referral is you give them the referral informations and get a good faith commitment that they will not attempt suicide. Okay, so hoping that they will be able to, you give them a contact, you tell them that, okay, 15999 is the number that you should call if you're in crisis, and you probably write down 1 or 2 hospitals names that provide such services, and then you wish them all the best. Okay, so this is not that you, at least you share the resources and informations with people. A 4-star service is that you are not only providing the context, but you also probably help them to get an appointment. You arrange for an appointment. So let's say the persons have decided that, okay, I can see a doctors in some way medical center, for example. Then you probably help them to call in and get an appointment. Stay with them a little bit while they are getting an appointment. We probably want to arrange them to see a counselor or to see a mental health professionals during the walk-in hours. The best services would be you take the person directly, so you go with the persons to see a professionals. Okay, and early willingness when you're going with them, especially they have confide with you, they tell you their challenges, and you listen very attentively, very mindfully. Some trust has been established, and when you offer yourself to bring them to get help, many of them would actually agree. Okay, now is it possible that we provide a 5-star services or a 5-star referral to everyone that we have met? Probably not so possible. Or sometimes, some acquaintance, some friends, maybe a 3-star will be good. People that knows you a little bit better, you probably want to do a 4-star service. But and people who are very close to you, and you find that you wanted to offer more help than not, then probably this is another way. But I'm sharing with you of different levels of how can you help the others. It doesn't mean that 5-star is always good in all situations. For effective care, you want to say that I want you to live, I am on your side. Now try not to do this alone. Try not to support suicidal friends alone. It's always a good idea to discuss with their family members, friends, religious leaders, or whoever that works, and probably a doctor, or whoever that will actually the person trusts. Never do it alone. You can, if your friends are seeing a therapist, you can offer to go with them. If you have the time, you can go with them, and you can check out with the therapist of how can I help my friends or my family members. Is there anything that I can do? Follow up with a visit, a phone call, or a message. Okay, tell your friends if you cannot go with them, then follow up with them with a phone call or message. Then that's help you to let them feel comfortable, let them know that you cares about what's going on there. Finally, there's one very, very, very important techniques of caring or supporting people with suicidal ideations. It's seriously very, very, very important. Okay. That is called self-care. While we are taking care of others people, when we are supporting our friends or family members with suicidal ideation, it is equally important to actually take good care of ourselves, right? Okay, with that, I end my talk. Thank you very much. I will move on to the Q&A part. Lynette, over to you.
Thank you, Kai Shuen. Wow, that was a very informative session. Okay, let me just quickly pull up the slides for our Q&A session. I know that we are a little behind time, so really appreciate for all of you who are still here with us, and if you really need to go, please do so, because we have our recording ready. But if you still have time, we really encourage you to stay for a bit longer until we finish off all the Q&A. And if you have questions coming in, please put it in the chat box right now as well. We'll try to cover them as much as possible. Okay, we have actually collected a few questions from the registration. The first one, I think Kai Shuen has made it very clear. In fact, the entire sharing was all about how can we respond to people who actually shared with us about their suicidal thoughts or ideation, as well as tools. The C.A.R.E, right? Care and concerns are expressed, to listen to them attentively, review risks, and lastly, to ensure to seek professional help. So moving on to another question, somebody asked, how can a person with mental illness help others? What is your thought?
Yeah, I think it's people with a lived experience. If they have survived from a mental disorders, it's actually very, very powerful. When as a professional, when I tell you about what is it, what is depression, what is anxiety, and how do you overcome it, you may hear, yeah, you are right, but you have never experienced a depression. You have never actually lived with a depression. You may have a lot of professional knowledge, a lot of theories and techniques, but you don't actually live with it. So I think people with lived experience, definitely they are very, when they are properly empowered, it can be a great asset in mental health promotions, and it will help a lot of people. The thing is, I guess the first thing first of people with have lived with a mental health experience, if you want to help others, number one, focus on your own recovery. You want to take good care of yourself. Make sure that you have been fully recovered. You are strong. You have built up your strengths. Then and your resilience. Then you can start to do a little bit more with others people. Some ways of helping others people, including if you probably want to discuss this with your therapist about helping others people. Some of my clients, they probably once they are recovered, when they are fully recovered and when they are ready, I encourage them to write out their stories, their journeys of recovery. How do they find out that they were not well? What are the things that they have done? They started to write out their stories, and they share the stories to with a magazine. They send it to magazines or to newspaper.
Wow.
Sometimes even sharing it in Facebook, and we of course we proofread the story a few times, make sure that it is safe to be shared and it is empowering for others. And from a few of my clients who have shared their stories in the social media, they receive a wonderful response, and their stories actually inspires a lot of people to get well.
Well, this is very encouraging. I think like a lot of clients come to us feeling like they are broken, but they can actually help. They are not broken. They are actually very good helpers and vessels to people around them. Thank you. And like I like how you mentioned about self-care is important for them, just like any one of us. Okay, we have another question here. How to face society's stigma and seeking professional help?
Mental health care is still very much of a stigma today. And of course, things are getting better as compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago. At the same time, I guess the first thing first off, we want to think things that if you are currently struggling with a psychological distress or struggling with a mental health issues, I think the first thing we wanted to consider about, do you want to get well? Do you want to be able to restore your functionings, to go back to become who you are again? If the answer is yes, then you need to get well. You need to get treatments. It's at the end of the day, it is your life. You are going to live your life, not the others people who are stigmatizing or who are focusing who are saying bad things about you, that is going to continue with your life. I know it is easier to say than done. So some other options is that, today, probably thanks to the pandemic, a lot of therapies, a lot of psychological services have moved online. And these are confidential these are confidential service. Some organizations are even offering free services, so you can probably check out those services. One of them is Mercy Malaysia. They're offering free therapy sessions for people. So it's online. You can get a place, you can get a room. It is just any video call, Zoom call, and you don't need to worry about whether people will find out about that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your share. We have a question in the group chat. In the chat box that I think it's pretty interesting. What is the most appropriate response aside from panicking that we can do if a friend or client calls us and shared to us that I'm ready at the edge of the building and I'm ready to jump down to take my life? What should we do at this moment?
Okay, so first, if your friends is already in the age of feelings in such a situation, the first thing is call the 999 so that the first responder can be there, bomba ambulance, and also people who are maybe police as well are probably over there that they can try to save them, trying to help them. Now, if the persons who call you still manage to talk to you and they are still having some sanity, do not hang up the phone. Keep talking to them, keep listening to them. The reasons why they are still calling you means that they have some trust on you at the very critical moments of their life. It's probably the last few minutes of their life, as supposed to be the last few minutes of their life. They are still thinking about you. It means that you are very important to them. And the fact that you care about them, you are willing to listen to them, can make a huge difference. Again, the principle would be the same. Instead of trying to tell them instead of trying to tell them please come down immediately, or you're trying to tell them that don't do something stupid, trying to advise them or scold them at that moment of time, you probably want to say something like, I'm sure this is a very tough decision for you. I'm sure this must be very painful for you to do this, to come into this. And I'm here. I would like to share your pain. I would like to share what's going on with you. Do you mind to tell me a little bit more about what's going on? Why? What makes you decided that it's today? Listening to the story and trying to listen to understand what's going on with them. Now, there are two reasons of doing this. Number one, you really want to care. You really want to listen to this person. Okay. Number two is you are also buying time. After you call police or and bomba, the fastest that they can reach to the place is probably 15 or 20 minutes. They don't appear immediately to the place, isn't it? So you still need some time for the first responder to be there and would be able to save them. So I think keep listening to them and trying to when you need to respond to them, and let them know that you really understand how put yourself in their shoes, knowing that it's not easy for them.
But I can imagine that it must be a very difficult situation for the listener as well, to be receiving such a call and feeling helpless all at the same time.
You are right. In fact, this is like a suicide negotiations, and it requires very intense professional training. It's an area of specializations, actually.
Yeah, right. And it takes special training, very practical skills, in fact, to really do that. We have another question from Tianmi. Let me read it out. If we would like to bring the friend to visit mental health professionals, but parents won't allow him to get out from the house due to the pandemic.
Okay.
What can we do? I think what she's asking, what else can we do besides seeking help from the hotlines?
Okay, Tianling, I guess there are two things that can be that you can consider. First thing, as I mentioned earlier on, there are some other than hotline. Hotline, obviously, sometimes it's being run by volunteers, so the help that can be provided are rather limited. Numbers of organizations, Mercy Malaysia is one of them that we mentioned just now. Another one is Thrive Well. Thrive Wealth is another NGO that is providing psychological services through online platforms. So if that is possible, then if the person at home has access to computer, has access to internet, then it is actually still possible to see a professionals online. At least you get some initial assessment, get some initial evaluation, see what's going on, and get an advice from the professionals of how can further support be obtained, right? And assuming that your friends is when you mentioned that the parents won't allow to go out from the house, I think I assume that this is probably a minor, probably an underage person. This can be a little bit tricky because getting help and seeking professional treatments without parental consent sometimes can be a little bit difficult. But anyway, I think the step one is get to see a professional, get to see some services online first.
Okay, we're gonna take in our last question for the night from Anisha. She's asking that her friend who has a son who is 14 years old wrote suicide note during anger to his mother. And his mother responded saying that she also faced similar situation, but life is so much tougher than what is going on with his life. What do you think of the way the mother handled this situation?
Yeah, I guess this is what I would say, that this is a natural parenting or mothering response. When people tell us about their pain, when people tell us about their difficulties, we frequently we will frequently and often tell them that actually I also go through the same thing. I also have the same issues, and I survived through. And those days we don't even have a computer, we don't have an internet, we don't have Astro. Things life were much tougher than what you are having now. You should be grateful and don't think too much. Don't think of you wanted to harm yourself anymore. But do you think that would work? Most of the time it doesn't work in that way, right? So I would say that as much as it is, I'm sure the mother is with very good intention and is trying to inspire her son that he's actually in a good positions already. He's actually doing very well already. But I guess the mother can be further benefits from learning how to. The son will probably find it more helpful if mom can learn how to listen properly, not advise. Would probably meow is one of the skills that you can share with your friend. Okay, if you find that helpful, and nevertheless, I strongly believe that this boy would need professional support, would need a professional evaluation and support. So do not just leave the son like this. I guess it's important to reach out to help. Right. By the way, since Dr. Amir is on the line, just wondering, Dr. Amir, do you have any comments on if minors who are seeking professional help, how do y'all go about?
No, not really, Kai Shuen. I think it's always been a little bit difficult. Often, as you have rightly mentioned, we would be recommending them to seek help. I think there's something called Buddy Bear now for minors or children as a helpline. At the same time, of course, in most hospitals, there are child psychiatrists, both in public and private, that you may attend to. Now that school is going to be reopening, in the schools, they've also got the counseling teachers as well, which is another point of call. And I think if you've been listening to the news, there's a lot of emphasis now in getting children to be sort of assessed during the time when they go back to school. So we hope that will happen, and we'll be able to detect early children that are struggling with their mental health.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Amir.
Thank you, Dr. Amir, and thank you, Kai Shuen. Thank you so much for all your questions. I know that probably some of you will still have questions, but don't worry, you can always email us your questions if we are not able to cover them today. All right, so that's all we have. Oh yeah, there's also this one question, one last question asking, how can I join the gatekeeper training? C.A.R.E Warriors are also planning, definitely in plan to come up with more workshops. So once we have anything in place, we will definitely keep all you guys updated. But Kai Shuen, do you have anything to add on this? Is there anything coming up from your end?
I guess that's all from my side. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so for the rest of you, we're at the end of our Sembang session today, and we would really like to hear from all your feedback so that we could improve better. So feel free to scan the QR code on the on the screen right here, and give us your feedback. All right, and for now, I guess that's about it. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have definitely maxed out our time as usual. We hope the session has been helpful and that you have enjoyed the session. If you would like to contribute financially to our cause, bank details are on the screen. Besides financial aid, we are also looking for volunteers to join us to spread mental health awareness. So if you would like to get in touch, please connect with us via our socials or drop us an email. All right. And also, if you'd like to catch up on our previous Jom Sembang sessions, you can find them on our YouTube channel at C.A.R.E Warriors. And if I don't have any more questions or comments, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, and thank you, Kai Shuen, for such an amazing sharing. I think all of us, we have learned a lot today. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.